Okay.
William Anthony Angus. Yes.
Okay, yes, we're doing the family tree DNA results for my father, William Anthony Angus. And this is his pedigree. You won't be able to see probably on the video the detail, but this is him. And this is his father, William Lestrange Angus, and his mother, Joy Eunice Angus, or she was Joy Eunice born Masson. And then we've got, following the Angus line, perhaps we'll just stick with one line, we've got William Nicholson Angus, and then you can't quite see it's running off the screen, but Frederick Threckald Angus, and then we go back further through to Thomas Crosswaite Angus. And the Angus line goes way back and is fairly well documented. We've also got a Nicholson line here of William Nicholson Angus, and the Nicholsons were up in northern England. The Anguses were up in northern England and Scotland before then, although we haven't quite traced them back into Scotland. They go pretty ways back in northern England. And then Anne Eliza Nicholson, was daughter of William Nicholson. And the Nicholson line goes back also in northern England quite a long way. We've got fairly good documentation of that. We've got a Robson line over here, and just some of the others. On Dad's paternal grandmother's side, he's got Lestrange connections, and the Lestrange line is very well documented too. It goes right back to when William the Conqueror came over, and even perhaps slightly before. So that's also fairly well documented. You can see it goes back a very long way. We've got a Colthurst line. They were Colthursts probably originally from England, but they were in Ireland, and the Lestranges ended up in Ireland. And then we've got Dad's maternal side. So we've got John Masson. We have 3 John Massons in a row. So we've got John Masson here, born in 1861, John Masson born in 1821, John Masson 1791. And we go back a ways there too, so we also know the Masson line quite far back in Scotland. We've also got a Jamieson line here. Dad's great-grandmother was Barbara Jamieson, or Jamieson, and we know a little bit about as far back as Charles Jamieson, and they were again in Scotland. We have Jane Top, the top line with 2 P's, at one time with 1 T, and even spelt tap further back. So they were also in Scotland way back. And we've got another line here, the first John Masson. It was my father's maternal grandmother, Flora Maria Marks. And we know a little bit about the Markses, spelled M-A-R-K-E-S. There's her father Samuel, and then William is back as far as we go. We don't know who Mrs. William Marks was. And we had some other lines, but I won't go into the details on those at the moment. We'll have a look at Dad's results and I'll introduce my father. Okay, do you want to come up, Dad? Do you want to come up?
You want to come up?
Do you want to come up? Oops. Sorry, my father's just coming. I'll just have a look and see. Yeah, there are some other lines a little bit further down and further up, but the main ones we're looking at are sort of Nicholson, Lestrange, Masson and Marks lines.
What got to do?
Just come and sit where I am, yep. Okay, so having looked at the pedigree, we'll switch over to the results on Family Tree Maker, and we'll look at the ethnic origins. So I'll just bring that up. switch over here and down to, I've already logged in under the username for my father, and so we'll switch over here to ethnic origins. Now you're 100% European. Now these ethnic origins are not necessarily your sort of immediate pedigree. What they are is they're an identification of the ethnic groups which you are associated with back further in history. So if we have a look now, we'll see that there are these general groups up there in Norway, in England, Ireland and Scotland, around the British Isles region, possibly extending over into France and Normandy, which would make sense. And then we've got a group down in southern Europe of all places, and that was the big surprise to me. So we can expand that, and now we see the different groups. So what we've got is we've got your Scandinavian, well, let's have a look at the British Isles, is 39%, I think, British Isles, which makes sense because you've got Masson, Scottish ancestors, you've got Jamisons and their associated families and ancestors go back a long way in Scotland, and families from England itself, and then there's the Irish connection as well. With some Irish, although they were Anglo-Norman Irish, they did intermarry further back into some of the indigenous Irish families, perhaps even going back to some of the older Celtic families in Ireland. But the big surprise was the southern Europe, which is to do with the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal, and Italy, and even into sort of Greece. So we're not quite sure where the connection there is. That came as a wee bit of a surprise. Now we do have some maternal lines that we haven't been able to follow back particularly far, and perhaps one of those maternal lines has brought in some ancestry from southern Europe, which was very unusual. But yeah, I just was, now the Scandinavian connection is, so that was the British Isles we were talking about a little earlier with the families mentioned. Back to Norway, as you can see, there's quite a strong Scandinavian connection. It's basically the same as the British Isles, I think, or just slightly less. I think we're sitting at 36% there, is it? Yes, it is. So it's 36%. So that's interesting too. I suppose that's coming through perhaps the Lestrange line and the Norman families, but it looks like they were very strongly Norway, so that was rather unusual. I wasn't quite expecting the Scandinavian input to be so strong and so sort of prominent, and from that particular region. I thought it might be a little south of there, but it looks like your Viking ancestors have been perhaps the input from the Anglo-Norman side, or perhaps even maybe some Vikings went across to Ireland, because we know that there were Vikings that went to Ireland, perhaps even up in northern England. We know there was a little bit of input up in northern England as well, so that was rather an eye-opener. But the real one that really has me questioning, and it must reach perhaps further back, is the southern Europe connection. So that's going to open up a whole new potential avenue of research. I do wonder whether it's the Marx line or someone close like that we haven't traced back too far. So perhaps the Marxes weren't just English Marxes with a M-A-R-K-S. Maybe there was, I don't know, I've seen alternate spelling of M-A-R-Q-U-E-S, and of course we've seen the RX spelling, which is normally associated with Jews, but I think it more likely that it's probably an Iberian sort of source, but we don't know. So that's very interesting. We know the pedigrees quite well, but we don't know the longer term ethnic background. So was that a surprise to you? Okay. I'll just cut in here again and just show you, this is a close-up of my father, William Anthony Angus's ethnic origins, and you can see if I flick between his ethnic origins and my ethnic origins as seen on FamilyTreeDNA, you'll see that I have really inherited that 50% or so from him, and I've also inherited another 50% from my mother, but in this region of Eastern Europe. So we know too that not only was her ancestry or her ethnic origins, well, we'll see, in this area of Eastern Europe, but there is also, and I'll give away a little bit of a hint, some origins from Norway and again in Southern Europe. So that's just strengthened there. So if I flick between the two, this is mine and my father's. Mine and my father's. So I'll show you all three when we've completed the next video, which will be on my mother's DNA ethnic origins on FamilyTreeDNA. Okay, so I hope that it's beginning to build a picture how pedigrees do tie in but extend back into the further past. But there are definite lining up of some of the information. It seems to make sense. And so we'll have a look at that further. Okay, thanks again for spending the time, and I hope you've got some benefit from it. Thanks a lot. Bye.